Hello, my name is Jim Royal. Today I'm going to be reviewing a classic live Beatle album. It's called The Beatles Live at the Hollywood Bowl. It is being released the first time on CD, September 9th, 2016. It was actually an album that came out back in 1977 originally. I think they're deciding to release it now because there's a new documentary by Ron Howard called 8 Days a Week, The Touring Years. It's about the Beatles. And it takes you through 1966 up until the very last gig they played at Candlestick Park in San Francisco. And that was August of 1966. So, you know, it's been 50 years since they were a touring band. There is, I've read info where when they were boarding the plane after that last gig, George Harrison sat down and he says, "Guess I'm not a Beatle anymore," because that's all they did. Well, anyway, this was an album, I wanted to tell you there's 13 songs on it. So I'm going to hold this up a little closer so you can see it. And then here's the back part. Okay, so this was actually recorded at the Hollywood Bowl. It was recorded on 3 different concert dates. It was recorded August 23rd, 1964. And then they recorded it 2 other dates in 1965, August 29th and August 30th. The plan was, back in '64, February originally, they wanted to record at Carnegie Hall. And what had happened was, I believe from what I've read, union regulations and other things, they found that it would be too expensive for them to record the album there at that time. That was supposed to be in February. So they decided to scrap that idea. And then in August of '64, about 6 months later, they tried it here and were, able to do that. The intention was to have a live album that would be released on Capitol Records here in the States only. They felt that the British fans already had many of these on singles and it wouldn't appeal to them. Little do they know, true Beatle fans. So what you have here is they recorded the album, they recorded the gig, and they played it back, and George Martin, their Beatle producer, actually was involved in that too. He was involved in all 3 dates. They played it back and they said, the screaming fans, the teenage girls, are just too loud. It's just too loud and they're, drowning out the boys. So we're going to have to scrap that idea for now. So they tried it again in August of '65 on those 2 dates. On the first one, August 29th, they had what they called a gremlin, microphone gremlin for Paul McCartney's mic, and they missed some of the audio for that. So then finally the next date they recorded that, and again, you've got many fans, and the technology in those days, they just weren't able to release it the way they wanted it. It drowned out the band. So it sat in the can. And it was in the can up until 1977. And they had originally recorded it on 3-track recording equipment. That's what, the U.S. had, did at that point. The British, EMI was using 4-track by that point. So we were always like a little behind. So when they, January 1977, they approached George Martin and they asked him, can you put together, look at these tapes and put together a good live album for us, with that then, state-of-the-art technology, and that's what they did. Well, the first thing they had to do is they had to transfer the tapes. These tapes were on the 3-track machines. That was obsolete by that point. So they had to find an old 3-track machine, which they were able to do. They found out, though, that every time they played it, it would start overheating and it would start melting the magnetic tape, so they couldn't do that. Well, just like, the days, pioneering with the Beatles in the studio, they came up with an idea. They said, well, here's what we're going to do. They took a vacuum cleaner, believe it or not, and they had it, instead of sucking air in, it sucked air out, okay, much like a vacuum cleaner. So when they played back the 3-track tape machine, instead of having it overheated, they blew the cool air on it and they kept it cool. So they were able to transfer it to either 16-track or 24-track. I hear different things. So Anyway, they recorded it on, you know, the latest technology at that time. And what they were able to do is they were able to bring the band up a little bit in the mix. And you had a great concert. I remember hearing it in the 80s, and I thought it was fabulous. So what happened was, one of the reasons why they did release it at that time in '77 is because there was another album that was coming out that had been out called The Beatles Live at the Star Club in Hamburg, Germany. It was from 1962. It was inferior home recordings of the Beatles live. And like I said, they hadn't had a live album, you know, like other major bands at that time. So that was another reason why they wanted to do it. And the other thing that was going on in '76, that was, you know, big live albums, big bands were coming out in those days. You had Peter Frampton Comes Alive with a huge live album. You even had Paul McCartney and Wings at that time, you know, come out with Wings Over America, which was a triple album. And you had Kiss Alive. So this is, when it came out in '77, it actually went to #1 on Billboard, which is just amazing for a band that had been broken up. At that point 7 years, and these were 12, 13-year-old recordings. So I'm going to give you the set list on it in order the way that they have it on here. It's Twist and Shout, She's a Woman, Dizzy Miss Lizzie, Ticket to Ride, Can't Buy Me Love, Things We Said Today, Roll Over Beethoven, that's George Harrison vocal, Boys, that's Ringo, A Hard Day's Night, Help, All My Loving, She Loves You, and Long Tall Sally. That was the original sequence of the album, okay, when it was released. Long Tall Sally was always a closer for the Beatles. Well, Giles Martin, the son of George Martin, in 2016 remixed the album, cleaned it up even a little bit better, and added 4 bonus tracks. You Can't Do That and I Want to Hold Your Hand were both recorded from '64, and then Everybody's Trying to Be My Baby and Babies in Black were from '65. So originally the album had 6 songs from '64, recorded then at the August 23rd date, and then you had 7 songs that were recorded, you know, in August of '65. Now this is really interesting. I had told you before that the first date in '65 on the 29th of August was not usable. Well, that's not true completely. They actually, I've been doing some research, the song Help was actually in its entirety recorded on that date, and then Dizzy Miss Lizzie, which is a great live version on here, was a combination of the 29th and the 30th of August. But other than that, it's the other 2 dates. So, you know, what I wanted to say just about this was I heard this in a record store several times in the past week. And I heard it on nice JBL speakers. It sounds phenomenal, okay? Now, there is some talk, some people that weren't big Beatle fans were saying, oh, you know, you have the screaming fans. Look, people, it's a live album, okay? It's a live album, and that's what you get. But what I liked about it was you got to hear the band. You got to hear, you know, Paul, the statesman, you know, in between songs and John was just having a ball. John was just funny. You had George, the quiet one, a little quieter, you know, he just wasn't, you know, quite as loud, you know, in between songs when he'd be introducing them. Wonderful, though. On a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the best, I'd have to give this a 9 out of 10, okay? The reason, because it's pretty much a flawless album for the most part. The fans are a little on the loud side, but like I said, it's a live album and that's what you get. But what I like about it too, you know, for those of us who weren't around in those days, or for those who want to relive those days, this is Beatlemania. This is what it was about. The 8 Days a Week documentary by Ron Howard, it's being released in a limited theaters in September of 2016, and it's finally then going to be released on Blu-ray and DVD in November 2016. I'm definitely going to get my copy. So I hope you enjoyed the review, and you have a good day, and thank you very much for watching, and please subscribe to my channel, Jim Royal 47. Thank you.